If you catch yourself doing weird things that others find strange, you might actually be way smarter than you think. Some of the most brilliant minds in history had habits that made people question their sanity. You know how some people just seem different? They do things that make you scratch your head and wonder what's going on in their brain. Well, science has found that many of these so-called weird behaviors are actually signs of exceptional intelligence. Today, we're diving into 5 strange habits that could mean you're operating on a completely different mental level than most people around you. Let's start with something that might make you feel a little less crazy. Do you find yourself having full conversations with yourself? Not just thinking silently, but actually speaking out loud when you're alone? Most people think this is a sign of losing it, but researchers have discovered something fascinating. A study published in the Quarterly Journal of Experimental Psychology found that people who talk to themselves actually perform better on cognitive tasks. When you speak your thoughts out loud, you're essentially giving your brain multiple ways to process information. It's like having a conversation with the smartest person you know, who happens to be you. Think about it this way. When you're looking for your keys and you say, "Where did I put those keys?" out loud, you're not just thinking about it. You're engaging both your auditory and visual processing systems. This dual engagement helps your brain focus and retrieve information more effectively. Einstein was famous for this. He would walk around Princeton talking to himself, working through complex physics problems out loud. His neighbors thought he was eccentric, but he was actually using one of the most effective learning techniques known to science. The reason this works is because when you vocalize your thoughts, you're forced to organize them in a way that makes sense. You can't just have a jumbled mess of ideas floating around. You have to structure them, which naturally leads to better understanding and problem solving. Let's start with something that might make you feel a little less crazy. Do you find yourself having full conversations with yourself? Not just thinking silently, but actually speaking out loud when you're alone? Most people think this is a sign of losing it, but researchers have discovered something fascinating. A study published in the Quarterly Journal of Experimental Psychology found that people who talk to themselves actually perform better on cognitive tasks. When you speak your thoughts out loud, you're essentially giving your brain multiple ways to process information. It's like having a conversation with the smartest person you know, who happens to be you. Think about it this way. When you're looking for your keys and you say, "Where did I put those keys?" out loud, you're not just thinking about it. You're engaging both your auditory and visual processing systems. This dual engagement helps your brain focus and retrieve information more effectively. Einstein was famous for this. He would walk around Princeton talking to himself, working through complex physics problems out loud. His neighbors thought he was eccentric, but he was actually using one of the most effective learning techniques known to science. The reason this works is because when you vocalize your thoughts, you're forced to organize them in a way that makes sense. You can't just have a jumbled mess of ideas floating around. You have to structure them, which naturally leads to better understanding and problem solving. Are you a night owl who comes alive when everyone else is going to bed? Do you find your best ideas hitting you at 2 a.m. when the rest of the world is asleep? You're not alone, and you're definitely not lazy. Research from the London School of Economics analyzed data from thousands of people and found a clear correlation between higher IQ scores and staying up late. The study showed that people with higher intelligence tend to go to bed later and wake up later than those with average intelligence. But why does this happen? It comes down to something called evolutionary psychology. Throughout human history, our ancestors needed to be alert during daylight hours for survival. Nighttime was for rest. But highly intelligent individuals have always been the ones pushing boundaries and thinking beyond conventional patterns. Your brain is wired differently when you're highly intelligent, While most people's brains start shutting down in the evening, yours might actually be ramping up. The quiet, distraction-free environment of late night creates the perfect conditions for deep thinking and creative breakthroughs. Some of the greatest innovations in history happened during late-night sessions. The theory of relativity, revolutionary artworks, groundbreaking business ideas. There's something about the stillness of night that allows intelligent minds to wander into uncharted territory. Now here's one that might surprise you. If your desk looks like a tornado hit it, if your room is cluttered with books, papers, and random objects, you might actually be displaying a sign of high intelligence. A study conducted at the University of Minnesota found that people working in messy environments actually came up with more creative and innovative ideas than those in clean, organized spaces. The researchers had participants work in both messy and tidy rooms, then measured their creative output. People in the messy rooms generated ideas that were rated as significantly more interesting and creative by independent judges. The chaos around them seemed to spark their imagination in ways that pristine environments couldn't. But this goes deeper than just creativity. Highly intelligent people often have what psychologists call cognitive flexibility. Their minds are constantly making connections between seemingly unrelated things. A messy environment actually mirrors this mental process. When you're surrounded by controlled chaos, your brain is constantly processing and categorizing information in the background. That random book next to your coffee cup might trigger a connection to a project you're working on. Those scattered notes might help you see patterns you wouldn't notice in a perfectly organized system. Steve Jobs was notorious for this. His office at Apple was famously cluttered, with papers, prototypes, and random objects scattered everywhere. Yet this was where some of the most revolutionary products in tech history were conceived. Do you find yourself asking, but why? Even when everyone else seems satisfied with simple answers, do you dig deeper into topics that others consider settled? This relentless curiosity isn't annoying. It's actually a hallmark of high intelligence. Highly intelligent people have what researchers call intellectual humility. They understand that the more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know. This creates a constant drive to question assumptions and seek deeper understanding. A study published in the Journal of Positive Psychology found that people who scored higher on intelligence tests were also more likely to question authority, challenge conventional wisdom, and seek out contradictory information. They weren't being difficult, they were being thorough. This behavior often starts in childhood. Gifted children ask an average of 390 questions per day, compared to about 65 for average children. They're not trying to be annoying. Their brains are simply wired to seek understanding at a deeper level. The problem is, this can make you seem difficult or argumentative to others. People might think you're trying to show off or cause trouble, but what you're actually doing is exercising one of the most important cognitive skills, critical thinking. When everyone else accepts that something is true because that's how it's always been done, you're the one asking whether it actually makes sense. This is how breakthroughs happen. This is how progress is made. Here's the big one that often gets misunderstood. If you genuinely prefer spending time alone rather than in large groups, you might be displaying one of the strongest indicators of high intelligence. A fascinating study published in the British Journal of Psychology analyzed data from over 15,000 people and found something remarkable. For most people, socializing more frequently led to greater life satisfaction. But for highly intelligent individuals, the opposite was true. The more they socialized, the less satisfied they were with their lives. This isn't because intelligent people are antisocial or don't like others, it's because their brains work differently. When you're highly intelligent, you often find that casual conversation doesn't provide the mental stimulation you crave. Small talk feels empty. Surface-level interactions feel draining rather than energizing. Instead, you prefer deep, meaningful conversations with people who can match your intellectual intensity. You'd rather spend an hour talking to one person about quantum physics or philosophy than spend 3 hours at a party making small talk about the weather. Solitude isn't loneliness for highly intelligent people. It's fuel. It's where they do their best thinking, where they process complex ideas, where they make connections that others might miss. Some of the greatest thinkers in history were known for their preference for solitude. Tesla spent most of his time alone, working on inventions that were decades ahead of their time. Darwin took long, solitary walks while developing his theory of evolution. These weren't people avoiding others out of fear or insecurity. They were people who understood that their minds worked best in quiet, focused environments. The modern world often treats introversion like it's a problem to be fixed. But for highly intelligent people, solitude isn't a weakness, it's a superpower. It's where breakthrough thinking happens. So if you've been doing any of these things and feeling weird about it, maybe it's time to stop apologizing for who you are. Maybe these aren't flaws to be fixed, but strengths to be embraced. Your brain works differently, and that's not a bug, it's a feature. The world needs people who think differently, who question everything, who aren't satisfied with surface-level answers. The next time someone calls your behavior strange, just remember that some of the most important contributions to human knowledge came from people who refused to be normal. Intelligence isn't just about test scores or academic achievements. It's about how your mind processes the world around you. And if your processing looks a little different from everyone else's, that might be exactly what makes you brilliant. Click that video on your screen to discover more surprising facts about the human psyche.